Hi. Till now, we have brought our model into the Unity. We have added animations, moving from idle to walk to run, without writing even a line of code. Now we'll actually get into the real development work. First of all, we need the player user interface, our keyboard or mouse or game controller, whatever it is, to bring that interface into our game so that we could this walk or run with a key press or with a mouse and turn all the stuff. And like the camera for third person view, which the camera follows the player to orbit around the player, and when we press walk or run, it will turn in the direction of the camera and it will walk or run in that direction. We'll do that today now. First of all, we need to bring in a couple of modules into our project. You can say Windows, and in Package Manager, instead of packages in project, go for all packages. Registry. First, we want to bring in the input. Probably it is already in your project. We'll check it out in any case. Yeah, this new input system, say install. This new Unity input system is slightly different from the old ones where we have been using. In old input system, we refer by the actual key. In new input system, we refer by the functionality. Instead of saying do so and so on press of space key, I'd say do so and so when I press the jump key. The jump key can be assigned different keys, space or control or whatever you think, or you can make it like dynamic using a separate menu and adding a new controller. Right now you design it for keyboard and mouse. Tomorrow you can easily add a like a joystick or anything like that. In which case you don't have to go and change the code all over the place. You just have to change it in one place where you are mapping to that function. Okay, we have just installed. As soon as we install the new input system, it just checks up like, okay, now you have used the new input system package. Do you want to reboot, blah, blah, restart the editor? Yes. Sorry, Unity just now crashed, so I had to just restart the project, and I'm back into the place wherever I was earlier. Okay, now that we have installed our new input handler or input systems, and the project got restarted in any case. While we are still here, we'll also install the Cinemachine package, the virtual camera system, which we can use for a third-person camera. Cinemachine install. Okay, now let's go to the actual programming. First, let me create a separate path for my code. Create folder scripts. Okay, fine. Now we have this main camera, which is right now looking at our character from the back here. Our player is at location 000, and my main camera is at location 00-5. It's just behind the player. This is our usual like pipeline. We'll add a Cinemachine virtual camera to the screen. Virtual camera is just like a driver for the main camera. It doesn't render on its own. It just directs the main camera. Whatever we want to do, we'll do to the virtual camera. The main camera will follow. There are quite a bit of advantages. With that, we could easily switch between cameras, and there are. I mean, this is actually suitable for my third-person controller. We'll see how to do that. First, we'll right-click in my project and create in 3D objects, as in Cine Machine, sorry, and virtual camera. I'll just name it something like follow player follow camera or follow virtual camera. When we create this virtual camera, it will add a camera Cine Machine brain into the main camera. It will automatically add that. We don't have to touch the main camera. We'll go to the virtual camera. In virtual camera, this camera will keep following any transform that we provide. We could actually give the player, but we'll add a separate uh, object, a transform for the camera to follow. We'll create an empty inside player, create empty. I'll name this as camera target or camera follow target. And keep it near about shoulder level. Okay, fine. And I'll use this as the target for my virtual camera. In follow virtual camera, the follow target is there. I'll just drag drop this camera follow target. And we'll keep the aim as do nothing, otherwise we'll have to provide this also. We'll have to actually set up the body and everything over there. The virtual camera will we first set up the position where we want to follow. We'll clear. Okay. We want to actually specify how far we want to follow the player. We'll set up the body portion where we want to like how much do we want to follow the player. Instead of -10, we'll keep it as -5. We'll follow fairly close enough. There are other settings like how like accurately you want to follow or whether you want to give some damping. If the player runs, you don't want to immediately go and catch up with the player. You will take some time to go near over there. This could actually prevent the nausea feeling some people may have. But right now, just by adding this, we should be like able to the camera should be able to follow the player as and when it does. We can just try that out. First, let's open the controller and dock it at one side so that we can make the player move without any code right now. We'll start. Okay, now the player is in idle mode. I'll change this idle animation. This looks very stiff rather. But those are all the fine tunings we can do later on. So if I change the speed to 0.5, it starts walking, it walks and camera follows actually. So it looks like it's just walking in place. Really, it's moving and the camera is following. You can see that it's moving. Uh, or you can see that the camera's position extended. It just keeps moving. Camera just keeps following. Okay, that much is fine. So right now we have our camera which keeps following the player. Before doing anything else, we like just to keep a ground with some reference where we can see where it is and how it is moving and all those things. Let's go to our scene, right click, create a plane. One plane by default, I think is 10 units. I'll reset it to 0. One plane by default is 10 units. We can keep it a little bit bigger. Okay, let's keep the size as 222. And to make sure that we get this units correctly, I just downloaded one texture from the internet with grid and numbers printed in. Just you can just get it anywhere on the internet. I got a like numbered grid, something like this. I'll bring it into my application first. This texture, I can just leave it there. I first bring it into my Unity application first, and I drag drop that into the ground. Basically, the whole ground has been covered as 10 into 10. That is still like what do you say, twice the unit size that we have. We can just try using a cube here. 3D object cube, which is by default 1 into 1 into 1. The grid is just about twice the size of cube. So in this ground material, we'll change the tiling. Instead of 1 into 1, we'll make it as 2 into 2. So basically, one cube, this cube comes to just about one grid element, you can say. Let's see. Let's try moving it. It's just about one. Fine. Now if we try walking and running, we can actually see that. And the camera follows actually. Okay, it is not falling off just because this animation which uses the root motion, in player you can see apply root motion. Our root motion, we are only using the root motion of the animation on x and z directions. While that is moving up or down, it doesn't use any root motion, that we should be using our code to do that. But otherwise, we have a following camera, the camera that follows our character. Now we'll go to the next step to make the camera orbit around the player, or even before that. Right now it just starts walking by giving the value, the speed value manually. We want to use the input controller, the WASD key, or arrow front back left right key. We should use that to change the speed to from idle to walking, and then press the shift button and W means it is running. We'll have to use that. For that, we'll have to start using our input. We can just create our input like the input controller ourselves, but we always have a shortcut for that. Usually, I also keep a separate player manager because I might be using different players. That's in my implementation. I'll be having multiple instances of players, like clone yourself, and I may be switching between players to solve some kind of puzzles at different locations, kind of stuff. But right now we have one player, so we can add our input controller right to the player. You can say add components in your player. We already have the transform and animation animator, which we don't have to change anymore. Just we have to add component player input. This player input, it actually can create a default set of actions for us. Just say create actions, and we'll say yeah, demo input actions is fine, and save. This by default have the very few actions that we do. Move to move the character, look, which we can use to look around the or move the camera around the character, and fire. It has some default set of keys also assigned. For move it is WASD key, or we can use the mm, uh, other controllers, joysticks, whatever. And for looking around, that will be using the mouse, the delta. These are like two-dimensional arrays. It's like a vector 3. This is like a vector 2. It's just front, back, left, right. Or in case of look, it is like orbiting around and orbiting up and down. So we already have this. We got it created. It got assigned here. And the behavior, we have a few types of behaviors. Broadcast message. This send message will just execute a function whichever is present on that same game object. Broadcast message, it executes the function in all the child objects also. Unity events, that's a separate topic out of there. I'll just go with send message, which means when something happens, it will just execute a code on this game object, which is player. It also says what are all the functions it will be executing. Right now, we can ignore all of them for time being. We are only interested in on move and on look. On look, it will send the two-dimensional variable which says which direction we are moving, up or down, left or right, or together, up moving, that's for look. So these functions will have to actually implement. Inside my scripts folder, I'll create C sharp script. I'll say demo input handler or open it. In this script, we just want to add the handler of all the inputs over there. We'll first clear off this update and these things. In older cases, we would, inside the update function, we would just keep looking for a key, and if it is like a key has been pressed or released, then do some things. Here, this is a callback. So it is like whenever you press a key, this function will be called. If we look at this code here, we already saw that what are all the functions that would be like called. We have, so we only want on move and on look. Let me just first implement the on look. Public void on look of input value. P input value val. This val actually it is like it will have to be casted to whatever value we are expecting. This input value, since it is a vector 2, we'll have to do it like vector 2, or rather we'll just set it as a class variable vector 2, and this is look val. So here my look val would be this val dot get of vector 2. And I'll just print it for time being. Okay, we'll just try running this. We'll add this code to the same game object where this player input is located. That is our player here. I'll just drag and drop this. I'll also open the console and dock it over here. Looks like there is some typo over there. Input capital V. Why do we get this error? That shouldn't have been. There are some namespaces to be set up using Unity engine dot input system. We'll remove the system collections, we don't need them. Save and we'll try running. So as soon as I touch my mouse, it starts printing there. Let me clear. Let me inside the game window. Let me move left and right. The X actually changes if I move left and right. If I move up and down, Y changes. So we'll use these values to orbit the camera around the player. Actually, orbiting the camera around this one object is easy in our case. We don't have to touch the camera or it transform or anything like that. In this player object, we have the camera follow target there. Camera actually looks at this target. Again, it looks at the target at the same direction. It's like it just goes behind that target. So if you look at that, if you actually rotate that target, your camera just orbits. Okay, we run. Look at that. We just try rotating here. It's this empty that we have created. Somewhat different. The offset that we have added. It's okay, we'll look at that. Sorry, this do one thing. The virtual camera settings, it is not supposed to be transposer, it is supposed to be third person follow. And of course, we'll have to set some of the settings here, the damping and shoulder offsets. Damping in all three directions, we'll just set some value which we can actually tune it later on. Oops, I'll have to do it while play is stopped. Third person follow and the shoulder offset is also fine. And the camera distance we want to keep a little bit behind. Okay, now we can try. Now if we try rotating this, camera orbits around. That's simple. And we can rotate it up and down. Okay, we'll have to put a clamp on that. We cannot just continuously orbit up and down. But basically what we want to do is, like when we move the mouse, we'll have to transfer that value to the rotation of this camera follow target. So we'll add it into our code, the onLook code. We are already saving the look value into a variable. We'll just have to apply that variable over to the camera follow target. We'll add another variable for the camera follow target. We'll say transform. Either we can drag drop this value, or I somehow let it auto find it. And in update, we'll have to continuously update that. This region is not a must. When the code becomes too big, we'll just collapse this region to keep functionalities together. Whatever code I'll be putting in here is just for outputting the camera. So we have the follow transform dot rotation. My Visual Studio is not completely set up, so auto like completion is not yet there. I'll set it up later. We want to change it into degrees, basically the value whatever we are keeping here. We change this. I can keep some rotation value. It depends on how fast we want it to rotate or not. Uh, we'll have to add that variable actually. And we also do it the other direction. Unequal dot y axis is for horizontal rotation, and that will be vector 3 dot right. We'll also add this float. We can say X angle. Never mind. We want to actually clamp this. My horizontal angle, I want to clamp. Sorry, this is not horizontal. This is the vertical angle that I want to clamp. Horizontal, I want to go complete 360 degrees. And is greater than 180 and angle is less than 340. That's where we want to come. I want to clamp it over there. Probably we can like name it as vertical angle or something like that, but really doesn't matter. And we just set it. That should all be the case. Let's save, go over. Okay, looks like there is an error. Semicolon expected. Let's give it a shot. Another mistake. Like this is transform. I think that's the autocorrect. Let's try out. Yeah, up and down. Okay, one direction works. Looks like the other direction doesn't work. We want to rotate the local transform, not the global transform. This would be local Euler angles. When it will have to orbit around the player, that should be going around y-axis. I think I haven't. Y-axis is still 0 here. We can see only z-axis moves, whereas z-axis should have been 0. Okay, let me just quickly go fix it. Here, this should be angles dot z. Should be 0. It should just take x and y axis. Save. Of course, the local Euler angles also should be local Euler angles, not the global Euler angles. Let's run. We are going around, we are going up and down. Perfect. So while we are here, we'll also make the keys for moving the character front. Right now, I don't have any animations for sideways strafing. Let's just keep it for the front one. And that is just easy, just to copy paste. On look, we also want on move. And we'll also keep move val. So what we'll be doing is first we'll have to get a reference to the animator and just set the float. Later on, we'll convert these strings into hashes. Let's look at the animator. That string name is just speed. We'll have to set a fixed value of for the walk 0.5f, and this we should be setting only if the y value is greater than 0. We'll add for running later on. For that, we'll have to add another run key. Like we press shift and forward, that should be running. Without shift, it should be just walking. Right now, we are only looking at WASD keys. So now we can orbit. We'll try W key. It's going forward. I release W key. It didn't stop. Okay, we'll try out now. We can orbit and we press W, it should go forward. We release W, should stop. Okay, now you can see that it is running on character forward, not the direction of the camera. And that is simple. We just have to make sure whenever we press the W, it will just align itself to the camera's direction. That's a small piece of code that we'll add again. Apart from orbit camera, we'll also add a region rotate player to camera direction. And we'll give an end region. So only if, what is, let's say, a move val. Only if mu val dot x is not equal to 0. We can also check move val dot y, but we'll do that also in any case. Transform rotation local, not local Euler angles, it is just Euler angles. Y, yeah, we only need to do the y direction. X and Z directions, it's just going to be the same. And we'll have to set it to the follow transform. Angles we actually calculated already while doing the orbit camera. Yeah, angles, yeah, right. We'll try it out now. Okay, now we can orbit around that. And when we press W, it looks at direct, turns to that direction and walks. Okay, this is a good point to stop. Now we have a third person actual camera following our player, and we can actually orbit the camera around the player by with the mouse, and we can make the player move with W key. ASD haven't been implemented yet. That we can decide on the gameplay mechanism of whatever game we use. I don't have a strafing right now, strafing to the side. And whenever we walk forward, it faces the direction of the camera and moves. I'll get you in the next session.